All right, welcome to the Bow Trader Podcast. Whether you're a long-time listener or joining us for the first time, man, I'm glad you're here. My name's John Keene, and I am the founder of Bow Trader, and we're just excited to be able to do this podcast and bring this to you on a weekly basis. You know, on the podcast, we're diving headfirst into the wild world of hunting and the great outdoors. We talk about all kind of different things, whether it's tracking and scouting tactics or just cutting up and telling silly tales and stories about things that we've gotten into when we've been out there trying to do some hunting. But we're always focused on the beauty of God's creation. From gear reviews and how to practice to finally making it to that awesome thwack of fall, buddy, we are here for it. Our faith is woven into every episode with real, down-to-earth discussions because it's not just about the hunt. It's truly about what matters most. So grab your gear, settle in, get you a cup of coffee, and let's get after it. All right, here we go. Bow Trader Podcast, number blah, 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 blah. Who cares? All right. So we got some familiar voices. We got Dub over here in the corner. We got Brandon across the lake right here. And then we got a new guy in here with us this morning. New guy. Say good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, there we go. Love it.
Nailed it.
Every now and then, you know, I'll tell people, oh, yeah, you got to be close to the mic. I mean, almost like you eating ice cream cone. Just don't make it weird.
I don't know if you can bring it up.
I'll stay bent over.
Oh, no. It'll go up.
Will it go up?
Yeah, it'll go up. Like loosen.
Is it this right here?
Loosen the. There it went. Loosen this right here, Robert. Look right here. Loosen that, and then pull up.
Oh, shit.
All right, we had some technical difficulties this morning. Keep loosening it.
Just trying to set the cord in. I bring Sasquatch to the podcast. Oh, look at that.
Just like that.
10%. Got to be 10% smarter than what you're working with.
Hey,
I failed this morning.
you just need to be smart as a monkey. That's all. You got it. You got it. All right. You know, my comment there was because we were talking about African hunts this morning before the mics got hot, and just the crazy animals that you see when you're over there, and the crazy people that you wind up being on a hunting trip with, and stuff like that. So, but anyway, Robert is joining us because he's been a customer of ours for several years. I've gotten to know him pretty well, and very like-minded, and I like him, so he got an invite. How about that? He's got some cool stories to share too.
Well, we shared a story this morning with Brandon, and about this young man. I think I was in the store the first time he ever pulled a 60-pound bow back.
Oh yeah,
and he was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and then I walk in this week and he's shooting an 85-pound bow.
Yeah,
I was like, holy cow!
Oh yeah, yep.
I even got my pocket knife. He was the knife guy when he was a little kid, and now had to buy a pocket knife this week from him.
There you go. Yeah. Dub was definitely the knife guy. You know, for years, you know, you'd see Wes, and it's like you didn't check to see if he had a knife. It was to see how many he had.
It was always a question of how many you got.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was like it wasn't just like he had a knife or he had two knives. It was
armed.
It was more like a dozen knives.
Yeah, why am I sharing this? But I had 27 at one point. That was my record in public.
In public,
At Del Sur, I remember.
like on you.
Yes.
Where did you put them? Were you wearing cargo pants?
No, I had a fishing vest on.
Were you like a ninja or something?
Yeah, I had one in my boot.
He's like 9 years old, man.
With shorts on.
This was like his thing.
Shorts, boots, and a backwards hat.
Yep, there you go.
You know what they say: stay ready. You don't got to get ready,
Bro.
That's
he
right.
was he was ready to roll.
Stay strapped or get clapped.
Hey,
I guess.
There you go. That's it. But yeah, so that's who Wes used to be, and you know we used to post videos. Wes would make he'd make knife videos, and we'd post them. And I mean, he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just showing a knife. Yeah. Man, they would get taken down every single time.
Oh yeah, it was like they'd be posted for 10 minutes and just
Yeah.
gone.
We had one that was posted for like I don't know, several months before he got caught. This was on one of the video platforms, not social media. And then they took it down and they sent us a message. This was like the most kind of, I guess, violent one that we had, where they sent us a message and said, listen, your account's about to get suspended, like completely taken down. It'll be down for 3 months or something. They gave a timeline or whatever. And if it happens again, it'll be taken down for 6 months, and you'll never be eligible for being monetized again. And we were like, I mean, he wasn't even doing anything wrong. He was just talking about a knife. But it was because of child endangerment was how it was flagged. So, yeah, the first time I ever got canceled on Facebook was I posted a picture, and I post like once a year, maybe twice. I'm not a big social media guy. But anyway, I posted a picture of me and the kids. This was years ago. And we were out, getting breakfast one morning or something. And I think I said in the post I was out with my favorite little people. And it was like, they took it down like within an hour and locked my account out and everything, which I didn't know. Somebody said something to me about it. They were like, hey, what happened to your post? Why'd you take it down? I was trying to show it to somebody that you were actually doing something fun with your kids and not working. I said, I don't know. I didn't take it down. So I looked at it and tried to go into my account or tried to, just open the app. I couldn't even open it.
So crazy.
Like I'd go to it and it was just a blue screen. It said, your account's been locked for community violation or whatever. So that was
crazy how quickly you can cut off.
They can find that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hate to be that guy that's always looking for stuff like that,
Yeah, well, it's little robots that are doing it. Yeah. but yeah. So that was my first little interaction with that. But anyway, so Robert, you tell us a little bit about yourself. Everybody's heard enough about us.
Grew up around a hunting family.
Yeah.
My dad took us hunting, did dog hunting as a kid. Talked about, harvesting your first animal. And then that was a little bit shocking to me. I wasn't quite ready for that. So then I stepped away from hunting a little bit. And then a good friend of mine, now a really good friend of mine, I'll name drop Corey Parker.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We went to college together, kind of knew each other, didn't hang out that much. In college, I worked full time. I got married. I had a kid in college. I was very busy trying to graduate. And we were on a job site together. He was a subcontractor for a GC that I worked for. And he invited me to his family farm at the time. I just got back into archery, and I was going to get my old bow service, and it still had metal cables in the bow. And so I took it to a bow shop. I'm like, hey, we can't service this. I don't even make them this way anymore. And got back into it. First deer I ever harvested was at Corey's family's property, and the rest is history. He invited me on an elk hunt, and now every year I do some kind of hunt the last, I don't know, maybe 8 years now, 9 years.
Yeah.
So it kind of brought me back to it. And, this is a biblical podcast kind of, or just guy in their faith. And I talk more to God when I'm in the stand or in the woods.
Okay.
And it normally takes me about 2 days for my mind to quiet, my spirit to quiet, and then I can hear and feel what's going on around me. So that was really the attraction. Wasn't necessarily taking the animal, because sometimes that's easy with the gear that we have now.
Yeah.
You shoot an animal 200 yards away and be having a conversation when you do it.
Right.
So it's more than just taking an animal. I wish more people realize that.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it is, though, like you said, taking a couple of days to just be able to settle in, because our minds are going so fast all the time. And I'm the same way. If I go somewhere, vacation, whatever, it's like 2 days, 3 days, and finally I'm able to just kind of let everything go and really be present with where I'm at then, but I think our minds they're not meant to run all the time, but I think they do,
For sure. And then even the day before you're getting ready to come back from a vacation, you're thinking about.
You're already thinking.
You're already getting into it. Sunday night, sometimes you can't go to sleep because
Absolutely.
things you got to do for the week. It's like,
Absolutely.
Man, I read something the other day. It was like when God created us, you didn't have red lights or radios or cars
or clocks.
Any of that
or
stuff.
social media or
But they were saying the amount of things that our brain processes in a day now is it would have taken you like years to process that a couple hundred years ago. You wouldn't be stimulated that much that often, and it's something we don't even think about.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
That's pretty crazy. Makes like intentional solitude like even more important, just to be able to get away and shut things down. But I don't think we're very good at that.
Well, when you look at it kind of to that end, Jesus told us to live today, right? He said, don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about tomorrow today. It'll take care of itself tomorrow. Don't worry about yesterday. It's done. You got to focus on today.
Right.
Like I've started, I don't want to say like keeping a journal, but I have I have to keep a list of things I need to do. I think I'm not a type A person. Yeah. So this is very easy. You're not reading my little notes here.
I can't.
Most of them are about you.
Yeah. Right.
I can't read it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I can barely read it as well.
It's written in code.
It is.
It's Arabic.
Yeah. It's
it's Hebrew. It's written backwards.
Yeah. It's right to left. But anyway, yeah, I had to start doing this because I was forgetting stuff that 10 years ago, I wouldn't forget anything. I mean, I wouldn't forget somebody's name. If they told me once, it was locked away. I have no idea how that would happen. If I needed to call somebody, I'd remember. If I needed to respond to an email or whatever, I would just remember about it. And now it's like, man, stuff just zips right over. And I think it's because
so much
it's just so constant. I mean, it's like, and you can't turn it off, right? Or at least we think we can't turn it off. I think that's really, kind of what we're talking about is that, you say that the really appealing part of hunting to you is being able to get to a spot where you turn it off, and, I think we struggle with that. And there's 100 different reasons why. There's a million different reasons why we struggle with it. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves. Well, I got this out because I was going to share what I wrote yesterday. I said, how do I learn to trust God like Job? I've been studying the book of Job all year, and I'm like, I'm not even out of the first chapter yet, and it's March. And I said, when I'm in times of prosperity, or when we're in times of prosperity, we're guilty of puffing out our chest and thinking it's because of us. Like, I've done this, I've been carrying this. And then when we go through difficulty and realize there's nobody else to blame but us, because sometimes if you've gone through all this crap and you're like, everything is going good and you're riding high and you're puffing your chest out, talking about how great you're doing. Well, if something goes wrong, how are you going to blame somebody else?
Yeah. Yeah, and that the scripture, that pride goes before destruction. I've seen that so true in my life. Anytime that I start to think that I'm anything, it's like, bam. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He humbles you quickly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'll continue with what I wrote. I said, we look around and then we realize there's nobody else to blame it on. And then we see God's right there.
Yeah.
Something will happen and we'll see that God's right there. And it's like, we realize how faithful he is in those moments. And we realize how worthy he is of our trust, right? Because to say that I'm not sure if I can trust God or not, I mean, that's really what we're doing when we're allowing ourselves to get completely consumed by things that are going on. What we're really saying is, I've got to be in control of this. I've got to take this bull by the horns, and I've got to get after it. I've got to be the one that makes this happen. And listen, there's a time and place for that. Don't ever feel like, okay, I've got to go outside and dig a hole. Well, don't go out there and grab a shovel and lean up against the shovel.
Yeah.
The hole's not going to dig itself. If you got to dig a hole, get a shovel and start moving.
Yeah. I think about where, Moses and the Israelites are facing the Egyptians coming, and God's like, just be still and know that I'm God. And then like verse or two later, he's like, what are you doing, Moses? Get going. It's like,
yeah. Well, and some people will say, well, there's a contradiction in the Bible there.
It's just, right? It's to be still and know that he's God doesn't necessarily mean you're in a closet, like, with your sitting, I'll say crisscross applesauce. And, with your hands out in meditation. It may mean that, but a lot of times it's still moving. It's just trusting him,
Yeah, I think it could be as simple as when somebody says something to you that offends you or upsets you or, ticks you off or whatever, not reacting in the moment, just saying, you know what, I'm just going to let this play out, and so often, we've talked about social media a little bit this morning. There's nowhere on earth where somebody will not hold their tongue like they will on social media.
It's easy to hide behind a keyboard.
Dude, listen, a man wouldn't say something to me in my face that he would say to me on social media.
Any day, man. God,
I think Mike Tyson said that one time. Like, we live in a world where nobody's afraid to get popped in the face. Like, if you're in your car behind a typewriter, whatever, the keyboard, and you're sending this stuff, well, imagine you were standing there getting on an elevator with that person. Would you say it right
Heck
then?
no, there's no way.
No.
Yeah,
and not just out of a physical altercation, just because it's rude. Like, there's certain things that I'm not worried about you and I getting in a fist fight, but I still wouldn't say it because it's not decent to say to a human.
Yeah.
But honestly, after watching Mike Tyson with Jake Paul, I would say it.
That was one of the worst decisions I've made in the last 6 months, was staying up to watch that crap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my
The fight
gosh.
before that was so much better.
Not to get political, but it was kind of like watching Joe Biden fight.
No.
It was like watching I don't know.
Sleepy Mike. Sleepy Mike.
Yeah. Sleepy Mike.
Oh man.
Can't move. His pockets are too full of cash.
Yeah, really. Good grief.
There's a good conversation. We're talking about Tyson or Biden.
Oh,
Pockets full of cash.
Whoa, there it is.
Yes. Man, I could go so many places with that, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. I tell you. Yeah, we don't want to be
very true.
We don't want to have to click the political button on before we post this podcast.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, thankfully there's not one of those. You just say whatever you want to say. We still live in a free country. Free speech.
It's pretty nice.
Hey, we don't know how good we got it.
Yeah.
We don't know how good we got it. Go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
No, I was just going to say, we don't live in Germany, according to Vance. Like, they're not censoring us quite that bad.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It's, man, some of the stuff that's going on around the world, with some of these governments and everything, it's
crazy.
It is insane. It's absolutely insane. And some of the stuff that we're finding out about what's actually going on within our government is, man, it is shameful.
Well, I think it goes back to what you were saying. Is you made a comment about crisscross applesauce in a closet, kind of in relation to our faith. And I think living in a country or living on the planet, it's easy to do the same thing. It's, well, I don't have to act. And there's a preacher said one time, and I'm sure he stole it from somewhere, and there's this guy floating in the ocean.
That a lot. Yeah.
And he's praying to God, and this boat comes by, and he goes, no, God's going to send me help. And the boat's like, okay, and takes off. And long story short is, the guy dies, and he goes up to heaven, and he's like, God, why didn't you save me? And he said, I sent 5 boats, 2 helicopters, an airplane, and a fish that talked to you, and you didn't take any of them. That was me coming to help you. So sometimes in the spirit, it's like, let God know that he's in control of your life, but that doesn't mean sit and wait.
Right.
The government is here to help. Don't let them overtake you. They're not supposed to be the almighty power in the country.
Right.
They're supposed to be here to serve all people, Republicans, Democrats, Christians, non-Christians. Yeah. And sometimes we just sit like, well, the government's going to do this, or my taxes will do that, and we don't even really understand how it all works.
Yeah.
And all that,
almost how God is.
Yeah, and all that. I don't even know how we got on all this. We went from you being in the woods and decompressing for 2 days and enjoying the outdoors to now we're. But I don't know. I think about even all the stuff going on with the USAID and all that stuff. If the church would be the church, we wouldn't need USAID. You know what I mean? Like, if we just did what we're called to do, then we wouldn't need all that stuff. Like, it would be a completely different scenario. And like you said, we wouldn't be dependent on the government to do everything for us. So
You'd be more dependent on men. And there's a topic that's touchy.
Yes.
I saw there's I don't know if he's a TikTok guy or a Instagram guy, but it's an old man with a beard. Looks kind of like the Marlboro Man. Have y'all seen him?
Mm-mm.
And he talks about the nation does well when the church does well. The church does well when men are men. Yeah. And I'm messing up what he said, but that's what I took out of it. And I was like, man, we live in a world that is so scary for men to be men.
Yes.
And somewhere down the line, men got it construed that I'm the all powerful, I'm the alpha, and I'm over women, and I need to govern. And I don't think that's quite what the book said. Like we read that scripture, you know, we go over it pretty quickly that the man's supposed to be the head of the household.
Yeah.
But then he says that you're supposed to love a woman like God loved the church.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, hold on, that guy died on a cross.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if that's how I'm supposed to love my wife, I don't know about you guys, but I definitely fall short every day.
Yeah.
And if I'm supposed to be the spiritual leader of my house and I'm supposed to guide my kids, my wife, and everything, then that means everything that happens, the heartbeat of my house is my responsibility.
Yes.
And I got to lean on God to do that because I mess it up every time.
Absolutely.
I mess up golf shots. I mess up hunting. Pretty much everything that Robert's supposed to do,
Yes.
probably a good chance I'm going to mess it up.
Yeah.
Golly, that's so good. And that passage of scripture you're referring to, man, it gets abused so much. And I think that's one of the reasons that, you know, submission in anything is so frowned upon today is because it's been abused. Like, you know, like for a woman, I mean, the thought of submission has been abused so much that no wonder it's kind of one of those taboo
I want to do it.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know too many women that if their husband truly loved them and laid down their life for them the way Jesus did for us would be like, I don't want that. You know, like to your point. So
Well, we're asking the women to be submissive, but then God asked for us to be submissive as well.
Yeah.
So it's not, well, I want her to do it and not me.
Exactly.
Like we're both supposed to be submissive to God.
Well, it's supposed to be from a place of being a servant, right?
Yes.
That's where we're supposed to come from.
absolutely. And our understanding of submission's backwards too. Like it's, you know, you look at Jesus and he was the most powerful person anywhere he went, and yet he chose to serve. I mean, I think about Philippians 2, where it talks about how even though he had equality with God, he knew like it wasn't something for him to hold on to, and he humbled himself and became a servant, even going to the cross. And it's like, man, that's submission, right?
He's washing people's feet.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Even people that were going to betray you, or a person who was.
Think about this. He rode in to conquer sin on a donkey.
Yeah,
All right. Think about your favorite war movie an old war movie where they were riding on horses.
yeah. Can you see William Wallace yelling?
Yeah,
freedom
Braveheart.
on like a little donkey.
You know, I mean, it would be a comedical farce, you
It
know?
would.
I mean, and it's like, but that's what he did.
With those sandals and that outfit.
Yeah.
So my wife and I were just fortunate enough to take a trip, and we go in these old historical places, and you've got Napoleon or all these great, you know, leaders, arguably great. They're on this giant steed, and their horse is bigger than everybody else in the picture. And they're wearing gold, and they're wearing this cool sword or this cool hat, and they look, like you were saying, it looks like Thor from the Marvel movie or something.
Yeah,
It's like, man,
yeah.
that dude looks awesome.
Yep.
And then here comes Jesus on his donkey.
Right.
It's like, something's different there.
Yep. Puts it in a different perspective. But all right, so we've talked a little bit about that being men has gotten this has this weird connotation to it in our society. And this isn't everywhere.
Right.
Okay. So we're very guilty as Americans thinking that however it is here is how it is everywhere.
100% agree.
Right. We're very guilty as Americans of saying white man bad. Right. But when you really look at it, when you look at the population of the world, white man isn't the biggest category.
Right.
Right. So,
And please, people that are listening, fact check that.
yeah,
if you don't
fact
believe
check it. Yeah. I mean, there's 8.2 billion people on the planet.
Yep.
And I mean, just look at the stats, you know, I mean, it's just what the message is not true, period. Okay. Now, is racism an issue? Yes. Is it an issue for everybody? Yes. To some degree it is, period. I don't care who you are or where you're at. It affects some part of your life, period. Okay. But so when we look at being men, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a man? Does it mean going and killing something? You know, does it mean having a big bank account? Does it mean, when you're younger, having all the girls or something? What does it mean to be a man?
Yeah. Well, we've lost that. I mean, even in the church, we've kind of,
Battery is at 96%.
Oh, thank you, Siri. Appreciate that. Just in case you were wondering, my battery is at 96%.
Well, you slept good last night. That's good.
Yes. So, but we've kind of made in the church even like manhood more feminine. Like we've kind of made church more feminine.
I know guys that won't go to church because they say that that's for the women to do.
Yeah.
They say that there's this perception that Jesus was weak or whatever.
Yeah, and that's such a crazy thing, but I get it, right? I understand, like, people talk about how religion, Christianity is for weak people. Like, we need something to lean on because we can't handle the world, But when you look
Which is true. I need something to lean on.
Absolutely.
Bro, I lean in pretty hard every day.
All 8.2 billion people do.
Yeah. I mean, because listen.
You're leaning on a drug, whether that's your hobby, an actual drug, a religion, an addiction. We're all leaning on something. And it's always been funny to me that everybody wants to, like you were saying, well, you're a weak Christian. You need a mythical person in the sky to make you do right.
Yeah.
Maybe. What's your God? Because we all have one.
Exactly. There's something that they're leaning on, but it's looked at as a weakness, and so people don't want anything to do with it, or they say they don't, or whatever. But I mean, when you look at Jesus, like, he wasn't a sissy. Like, he took on the whole religious establishment of his day.
Kings looked him in the face.
Yeah, it looked him in the face. He took on the religious leaders of the day, which were, some of those powerful people. You talk about corrupt. And then not only that, but he took on death, hell, and the grave and defeated it. Mm-hmm. You hear some people talk about how they're going through their Gethsemane when Jesus was suffering and struggling with going to the cross. But we'll never go through a Gethsemane. We'll never go through anything like what he went through if we're a believer, because he did that for us. And, like, to me, that is not weak. That is a man. That
is the picture of strength.
Yes, it was strength. and I think about meekness, strength under control. Mm-hmm. Like, he could have done anything. And even Satan had tempted him.
Right.
To, here, I'll give you everything. Just worship me. You don't have to go to the cross. You don't have to do this. But the amazing thing about it is he could have taken the world, but he wouldn't have saved us. And he chose to go through what he went through and face it. And Scripture says he set his face like flint. And I love that. This picture of Jesus going, all right, let's do it. And just going on, knowing exactly what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kicker. I was put on this earth to do this task. When it's coming. I'm talking to my Father about it, and I know this is when it's time to do what it's time to do, and then doing the difficult thing.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that I think we miss a lot is, especially as parents, I think we have to be careful not to try so hard to keep our children from avoiding adversity, but teaching them how to go through it. And because in life, if you avoid the hard thing all the time, like, where do you get, and what do you do for the Lord? Because nothing you do for God's going to be easy.
Well, if we avoid the hard thing all the time, that's really what builds character, is going through tough circumstances. That's one of the reasons that sports can be so good.
Absolutely.
Because as you're going through sports, especially if it's, a team sport, you're going through hard stuff together with a team, right? And it's teaching you principles about how to go through life, if it's done the right way and if it's coached the right way, right? And now, very often, it's about, if we don't win, you guys suck, you're terrible, blah blah blah,
Which
all
I
this
like
kind
to
of
win,
stuff. Hey, winning's a big deal. Don't go into a game. Don't ever go into a game or go into anything expecting to lose. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me. But if you lose, don't lose all hope and be completely distraught. I mean, okay, you lost the game. All right. That's probably going to have an impact on your season, may have an impact on your career, whatever, but it's not the end of the world. Right. So I think that's something that we need to be able to put in perspective, and going through something like that helps you build that character where you understand, okay, this isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, I think the one thing I learned through the 2-a-days in football camp, all of those things, baseball, just all the running, doing all those things, was I could always take another step. When my body was screaming and saying, you need to stop, like, there was ability to take another step. And so when things get hard, just knowing, okay, this sucks, but I can take another step. I'm just going to take one more step.
Yeah.
And I encourage people that a lot. Just keep stepping. Just, the only way you stay in a valley is if you stop there. You know what I mean? If you're crossing through and you're going through a valley and you just take one more step, lean into the Lord, and eventually you come out of that, but it's tough.
So where did this thing come up where quitting is an option? Like, it seems like to me, quitting is, how do I say this correctly? It seems like quitting has become like, okay.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I think it's been pretty easy. I think we got away from all the difficult things, and it's go with your feelings. Well, and there's feelings that I don't want to get out of bed this morning. There's feelings I want to eat this extra donut. Like, your impulse, if you're answering to the flesh, is kind of how it was explained to me.
Yeah.
You're always going to fall short, because my mind and my body wants to be weak. Your body doesn't want to run.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't want to fast. Your body doesn't want to do the things that it takes to make it strong. Well, if you give in to all that and you eat the cake and you feel like crap, you can't do the things that you're made to do.
Okay, there are no donuts here this morning. I know we're not videoing this morning, so nobody gets to see this, but there are no donuts here.
But if you do all the softer things in life, you just become soft. And it's hard to realize that. Like, well, now I sleep in till 10 or 11 o'clock every day, and I don't go to bed till 4 a.m. And that's not how we were made. And I don't know anybody that's really successful on that clock. It feels great. I mean, there's always exceptions to the rules, but to the masses, I mean, if you want to live a long, prosperous, happy life, you have to do the difficult things. Every time I've done the easy things, it normally does not. For me, it never has led to success or happiness.
Yeah.
It's always shallow. And in the moment, I feel good, and right after, I feel terrible.
I think it even goes back to looking at, like, the tenure of people staying at one job now is maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And
I got a 3-year shelf life normally until now that I'm older.
Yeah. And it's like, you look at it, and why does that happen? A lot of times, maybe it's because you get a better offer, but a lot of times it's because things got hard. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And instead, and two, nowadays, everything's someone else's fault. I see this even, I've coached a lot of baseball and stuff, and it's always somebody else's fault. And so it's not that my kid isn't quite good enough to get on the field, or it's not that my kid needs to work harder instead of sitting on the couch and eating donuts. It's always the coach's fault. It's always, something else that's the issue. And we've just become really good at making excuses, for not working and not being willing to push through the challenges that we face.
I say something at home, and my wife and daughter do not like it. And it's everything that happens in your life is your fault.
Yeah. And
people do not like that.
Yeah.
And then I'll explain, like, okay, you got rear-ended at a red light. That's not your fault. That's not what I'm saying. But when my wife and I struggle, and we're not talking or holding hands or doing whatever, people are like, well, it's 50-50. No, it's not. I'm 6'8", she's 5'2". When I walk into a room, I bring an energy in there. And if I'm not setting an energy where she wants to come show me love, that's on me.
Yeah.
And then if my kid, like, I can make an excuse for everything that goes right or wrong in my life. But at the end of the day, there's only one person that's there throughout my entire life. It's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And could I handle that differently? Well, John said this and invited you to do that, and it's kind of his fault. And it's like, no, I could have said no. I could have known, I can tell you examples of a person's behavior, and I should kind of know how that experience is going to go.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about, is it discernment? Is that being able to, my intuition's telling me this. Hey, my intuition was saying, Robert, don't go to a bar. Don't have alcohol because you get touchy-feely. And then I did it. And then when something bad happens, it was the alcohol's fault. It was just, no, you knew you were that way.
Oh, yeah.
You put yourself in that situation.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much everything that goes wrong in my life. I could tell you 3 or 4 steps that led up to it where there was a little flag in my head that said, Robert, this isn't what's best for you. Hey, Robert, don't do this. Hey, Robert, this is now a time you're about to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, the boss did that. The boss didn't do that. Robert did that.
Yeah.
The boss had to react to what Robert did.
Yeah.
And so when you really sit down and you can sit in the woods by yourself and you can think about that, and it's like, well, what would I have done differently if I wanted the outcome to be different? Yeah. And there's always something I can do. And that sometimes it's hard for me.
Yeah. And I stole this from somebody else, but
Well, if you rent it for long enough, you can just adopt it as your
it's
own.
like you tell it 3 times and it sure.
Oh, it's 3? I thought it was more than that.
Nah, you tell it 3 times and it sure.
In today's world, it's 2.
Yeah. Because, I can make an excuse. But, I've heard this, that we too often look out the window rather than looking in the mirror. And we're always looking out the window for somebody else to blame rather than looking in the mirror and owning it, And if you think about that, like, it's so easy to do is we want to look and find somebody else that's the reason for the issue. But here's the thing I would say is, like, if everywhere you go, the same problem's there, it's you.
Yeah.
Common denominator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I mean,
it's pretty simple. I mean, it's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if everywhere you go, there's the same problem, it's probably
Look
not
in the
everybody
mirror.
else, like Jesus said, he said, you're worried about the speck.
Yeah.
And you're worried about the speck in my eye.
Yep.
But you got a plank hanging out
I
of
was
yours.
just studying that the other day. I mean, it's good.
So, man, so we talk about going out and being in creation and unplugging and being able to have those moments where we're just able to block everything out and we're able to listen. And we're
And
able
killing
to
stuff.
And that's it's like sometimes the best way to ruin a hunt or the best way to ruin an afternoon is to kill something. I mean, I'll just say it.
That's when the work starts.
Yeah. But how do we get to that place where we're intentional about doing that on a daily basis? Because, all right, so we talk about fasting is not something we talk about very much.
Yeah.
It's not really taught. It's not preached on. It's not something, you'll hear. It's become more popular, like in the health community, where they're like, "Hey, you need to fast from this or whatever." But from a biblical, spiritual standpoint, it's not talked about that much. But the reality is, we're fasting spiritually all the time.
Yeah.
But in an unhealthy way, I mean, so you think about, if you go to church every Sunday, well, if you're not picking up the word and reading it at some point during the week, man, you're starving yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I truly believe that. How often would we eat a big meal on Sunday and then not eat the rest of the week until next Sunday?
Yeah.
How many people do you know that do that week in and week out?
Right.
I'm going to tell you, you don't know many because they're not going to last long like that. It's just not going to happen. So how do we get to that point where we're intentional about what we're putting into our minds? We're intentional about how we live our lives. We want to do it from from whatever our career is. We know we need to be intentional. We know we need to be diligent so we can get to the results that we're trying to get to. It's very simple. That's a very simple equation. Well, if I don't show up, and do my job, then I'm gonna struggle financially, right? I mean, that's very simple to see that. Well, if I don't show up and spend time with God, I'm gonna struggle to know His character and how He wants me to live, right? So when we look at who God is, He is the creator of the universe. period. That's who he is. And he created me and he created every one of you. And he created every one of us with a purpose, with an intention in mind of who we were going to grow to be. And the good news is he wants us to be who that is way more than we ever will. So he's gonna lead us to that point. But how much are we gonna fight him along the way because we don't get it, we don't understand. So I'll go back to my original question. How do we build that stuff into our everyday life to make it so it's important, make it so we're intentional about it? What does that look like?
I think it's a tough one. When you we talk about the God of the universe, like I don't even know that humans can really fathom that.
We can't.
And you said like 8.2 billion people on the planet now. Well, that's just now. What about all the people before us, the thousands of years, and how really giant this really is? So I just ran some math. So I go to church for roughly an hour on Sunday, 7 days a week. That's 168 hours. I'm expecting 1 hour of 168 hours to get me good for the week. If I only spend an hour at work, I'd be fired. If I only spent an hour on my marriage, I'd be divorced. If I only spent an hour being a parent, I'd be a terrible parent. So what else in my life? I'm a golfer, a bow hunter, and I get ready to go on a hunt. I don't shoot 1 hour a week when I'm getting ready for a hunt. So for me personally, so again, everything's from Robert's fault in Robert's life. How can I get ready to go on an African hunt or an elk hunt, and I shoot a bow 2 hours a day, 4 times a week? I only spent an hour in God's presence, and really I don't mean to step on any toes, but when I'm sitting in a church, there's 90 other things running through my mind while I'm trying to listen to a sermon. I have to constantly pray, Lord, quiet my mind so I can hear your message. So out of that 1 hour, how much time am I really getting? They sang some, check the kid into, Bible study and all that. So what am I getting, 30 minutes maybe? And that's not the preacher's fault. That's Robert's fault. How am I going to be spiritually healthy with 30 minutes a week? It's just not going to happen.
And that comes back to like our minds being so busy. The statistic I've always heard is people have to hear something 7 times before they retain it. And I don't think that's because people are we're not that stupid. It's just there's a lot going on in there, And I mean, how many times have you been reading a book and you read 4, 5, 6 pages and you go, "What did I just read?"
Oh yeah, I'm terrible about it.
You think about something else, and all of a sudden you're reading, but you're not comprehending.
I have to pray out loud, because I'll forget that I was praying, and I'll be thinking about something else, and I go, "God, I'm sorry," and I'll have to literally say the prayer out loud just so I can, like, it feels like I'm talking to Him, and I can stay on track with what I'm trying to talk to God about.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad, and I'm not stupid by any means, but it's like, good Lord, you can't even get through a prayer.
Bro, I think it's awesome that you've identified that and you've said, I got to fix this because I want an intimate relationship with God, and if that means I need to pray out loud, when I'm riding down the road in my truck, I'm praying out loud.
Yeah.
Or when I'm getting up early in the morning and I'm reading scripture, and then I have that opportunity to sit there and pray. And, praying for others and praying for what's going to be going on throughout my day and all that kind of stuff. If that's what you need to do, I say do it.
Yeah.
Because a prayer can, and I think this can happen at any time, but you'll be sitting there praying, and then all of a sudden, you're thinking about your grocery list, or you're thinking about, I got to call that guy back today or whatever. And, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I've had numerous times where I've been praying silently early in the morning, and I'm like, God, I don't know what just went through my mind. It's like I was walking in the woods and saw a squirrel.
Yeah. And you can see it like when I'm preaching on Sunday and I'm looking out at the congregation. And you can see the distraction. You kind of, sometimes I have to find people that are locked in, and kind of look at them, because that's a lot more encouraging than seeing somebody that's like staring at their shoes. Or, nowadays we carry our phones everywhere, and you see somebody on their phone. And so I joke around about it. I'm like, every time I see somebody on their phone, I'm just like, they're texting somebody, telling somebody that this is the best message they've ever heard.
So how powerful is that? You're standing up there giving a sermon. You're doing
Yeah.
God's work right now, and you can look out and you can see that guy's not in tune, but then how quickly it distracts you. It's got to be, hey, the Lord said to John, there's Robert looking down.
Yeah.
Giant head over everybody's face. I can see his whole face not looking at me.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lord, I'm trying to say this.
Yeah.
That's how we're all so easily distracted.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you know, what I look at is, that's not my responsibility, right? My responsibility is to read God's word, hear the Lord, and deliver the message to the best of my ability, and then trust God with the rest, you know? And so, it used to bother me to where I would sort of get discouraged in the message. And now it really makes me preach harder, because I'm like, you know, I didn't spend this time with the Lord, and the Lord give me a message that you need to hear, that I need to hear for you to stare at your shoes, you know? And so, you know, sometimes I'll clap, before I've said, look, if you're sleeping, like, you need to wake up, you know? And I don't know, it just, because I'm like, why are you here? If you're just coming here for a nap. And I had somebody say, well, maybe they're just tired and they needed to come. Well, I'm like, then go to bed. But like,
Don't go to church just to check a box.
yeah. And so I don't have much of a hard time anymore just calling that out, you know?
Tell everybody to stand up and clap.
Yeah. I'm like, hey,
And there'll
you
be
know,
2 or 3 just sitting there.
yeah. And, man, this is no joke. One time, after a service, there was a guy who was sitting up near the wall, and he fell asleep with his head against the wall. Everybody left. This guy is still asleep after everybody left. We had to go wake him up to get him to leave. And it was hilarious, but I have been told that I am the cure for insomnia.
Really?
So yeah,
There you go.
So you know, you don't need
In a loving way. In a loving way.
no, it wasn't in a loving way. But you don't need Ambien. Just turn on one of my messages, and you're out in like 2-3 minutes.
Well, I'm glad I could help you.
Yeah,
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
There you go. Oh my goodness.
But it's good. We were talking about a few things and you praying and things like that. And I always joke with the ones closest to me. I'm always like a beginner in Christ. I'm learning something new about the Bible, what works for me. And then I'll get away from it for a week or two where I'm just busy, and then getting back into it is almost like learning to walk again. Yeah. But like how you can pray differently now. It's amazing. Whatever you spend time doing, you get better at. You used to get distracted by somebody's face looking at their shoes. Now it makes you pray harder because you've done it 900 times.
Right.
And it's like a friend of mine, it's golf related, but he said, Robert, imagine if you walked into a gym and you hadn't been in there in 5 years, but you used to be a beast. You could bench 500 pounds and you ain't been there in 5 years. I could promise you're not benching 500 pounds.
No way.
You're about to get crushed.
You're about to get crushed.
Yeah.
And so if we looked at our faith that way, if you're only here for your 30 minutes on Sunday, how strong could you really be?
Yeah.
Not very strong. And I'm guilty. I'm in the 30-minute a month kind of guy from time to time.
Yeah.
I try to watch some YouTube videos to give my shot in the arm, but normally I'm fighting something when I walk in and listen to a preacher. He didn't say that right. He didn't do this right. And I'm like, good Lord, Robert, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're here to get something better, and you're trying to nitpick things apart. What in your spirit is telling you don't listen to this?
Yeah. And that's another thing I think when you do go to worship is what's your heart when you walk in? Like, are you looking to receive something? I know the times that I've gone to worship that I wasn't preaching, you know, I can get something from any message pretty much if I go in with a heart that wants to get something. But also know every Sunday there are people who are in the congregation who just want to find something wrong with something I say.
100%.
And so it has a lot to do with our heart. And I've noticed too, just in my own personal life, the strength of my relationship with God is directly related to how much time I'm seeking Him in His Word. More than anything else is how much time am I seeking Him in His Word. If my relationship feels distant, there is a direct correlation with how much time I'm spending with Him.
Well, I'll tell you with 100% confidence, if you feel distant, if I feel distant, it's not because God moved.
Yeah, yeah.
He is.
Whose fault is it?
Yeah, that's exactly back to your point.
Yep.
Yeah, back to your point. But yeah, so you say that, and Robert, just like you said earlier, if you're only spending an hour a week with your daughter, you know, you don't have a very good relationship with her. How can you? how can you have a good relationship with her?
And then what I teach her falls on deaf ears. You're never around. You don't do this.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, it's almost like you have to make a deposit to earn the right to be able to speak into somebody's life.
You do 100%.
And
that's a big task as a man. Like, hey, I can speak on something, but then if they look at me and go, well, you don't practice what you preach.
Yeah.
Hey, you do X, Y, and Z, and you're telling me not to do it.
Yep.
That doesn't hold any water, and that's a load on men's shoulders. Hey, you're supposed to fix his house, but you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing either.
Yeah.
And it's I think the world that we live in now is always judging, and even you walk into a church looking for what they're doing wrong.
Yep.
And I'm guilty of that. And it's like, how am I supposed to be bringing those around me up when that's in my heart?
That's right.
At times,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to be bringing up my neighbor when I'm just judging him? Well, I do this better than he does, or he's falling short.
Yeah.
Well, newsflash, we're all short. We all fall short.
Right.
It says it in black and white.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yep. Dub, what you think? Silent this morning?
I was looking at his shoes.
Mm-hmm. He fell asleep. I saw it.
Yeah.
Eyes glassed over.
Yeah, eyes
Want to talk
wide
about
open,
something a little
asleep.
more exciting, like shooting some animals in Africa? Can you say that?
Yeah,
hey,
Yeah,
we up there.
we just said it.
Hey, let's get away from all this mushy feminine stuff and kill something.
Oh man, you tired? All right. So one more thing. So we talk about. I say one more thing. I'm lying. I'll just say I'm lying. I'm sorry. But we how do we get to that spot where we're not just judging each other all the time, and we're trying to intentionally, diligently build each other up? How do we get to that place? And that's hard.
That is very hard.
Right. But it doesn't have to be, I don't know why it has become so hard, but, I don't know. I'll let you guys talk. I'll share some of my experience too, but I want to hear what you guys say about it.
They say you are who you hang around. And my wife and I have met a couple that we get to hang out with from time to time. And it's one of the few couples that I can hang around, and I don't feel like I have to give a disclaimer with something I get to do. I didn't come from money. So when we get to take a trip, I get to go to Africa, and people immediately think like, oh my God, they had to count all this money. Well, I'm a baller on a budget. So it looks like I got to do these really cool things, but I'm buying bows off eBay and letting you set them up, John. And you're like, hey, you ever going to buy a bow from me? Which I did.
He did.
I did.
He
Finally.
did. I was worried about it for several years here. I was like, man, he's going to be that guy. He's going to be that guy.
But there's a lot of hobbies, so I have to be careful how I do it. I've got a budget and do all these things. And so having someone around you in your corner that you can just say, hey, this is who I am, and they can do two things. Robert, that's so awesome you get to do that. Or, Robert, that's not cool. Don't go down that road.
That's right.
And then we live in this world where our egos are like, well, I can't believe the pastor called me on that and said that to me, or I can't be honest with myself. And so having people in your corner that can hold you accountable and then sing your praises at the same time is difficult to find.
Yeah, the community is so important, And you mentioned ego. And again, makes me think about Philippians chapter 2, where Paul's writing to the church in Philippi, and he says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. And you can't value someone above yourself if you feel like it takes value away from you. And so until our value is found in Christ and we realize that we are enough in him, we're not going to be able to elevate other people above ourselves, because it feels like it diminishes who I am. There's always, I've compared it before to the difference in doing a push-up or a bench press. You talked about the gym. Typically we're trying to do a push-up on other people's shoulders rather than, a bench press where we're lifting other people up, because we don't want someone to get ahead of us, because then it feels like I'm less. And reality is, though, that my value doesn't diminish by somebody else's success. And then I'm able to value them above myself, to encourage them in the things who they are in the Lord, and in their life. And I think that's a big part of it. But for me, I need people around me who can remind me of those things, remind me who I am in Christ, remind me what really matters, and hold my feet to the fire. So
It's tough. And for the people that are listening, if you think that's not you, go meet someone new and listen to the questions that you ask them.
Yeah. Listen to how you respond to questions.
Yep.
You know, what do you do
for a living?
Yeah. I mean, why?
We're measuring people up.
Why? Yeah. Why is that one of the first things you say when you tell somebody who you are?
So the excuse I give myself is I meet John. Hey, what are you into? What do you do for a living? I own a bow shop. The way I justify my question is, well, now I know that we're like-minded in archery, so I have something to talk to him about. But really, if he said nothing, I just, I live on credit cards, I sit on the couch and, go to church, I'd be like, well, that's kind of less of a man. Like I would immediately judge him, and I'm terrible about doing it. Yeah. And I try to justify to my kid that it's not judging, it's what book am I reading?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the book of John is he doesn't do this, he likes this, so then I know how to respond and interact with him. But there's definitely underlayments of judgment, and then weighing, and then where do I put him on my spectrum? And if he says something, am I going to give it value, or am I going to dismiss it because I don't respect him as a man?
Another great thing to do is when you're in the midst of a conversation, can you actually be present in that conversation, or are you trying to read the facial expressions and the body language of the person you're talking to see if they're approving of you? Kind of flipping that on the other side.
Listen, I will admit that I am guilty of being in a conversation with somebody, and I'll walk away from it and I'll be like, what did they just say? Like, did they ask me to do something? Or, I was just checked out. And I get so mad at myself for that I'll let that happen. So I'm dumb. Okay. So I have to come up with weird little ways to do things like to remember people's names. I didn't realize I was doing this. I said, earlier, 10 years ago, I'd hear somebody's name once and dude, it was locked away. Now I got to hear it twice. And then I'll come up with some kind of weird way to remember somebody's name. So I've learned that I've got to be creative to get to a point where I want to be, where I'm able to block out everything else and just have this conversation. But it didn't come naturally, and it didn't come easily. Yeah. I had to be intentional about it. And I go back to that all the time. Several years ago, I did a Bible study on my own. It was just what I was doing, my daily reading. And all I looked at was everywhere in Scripture where the word diligent in any form was written. And I studied all around it, to understand what it was talking about. Man, it's I've got it written down somewhere how many times it was recorded in Scripture. And I would find it, and I'd write out the Scripture, and I would look at, okay, well, what was it talking about right here? Like, what does it mean in Proverbs where it was talking about being diligent? And obviously in Proverbs, in that particular passage, it was talking about, if you're not diligent in your work, then, poverty is going to come on you. Like an unrelenting storm, basically, was kind of what it was talking about. And, that spoke to me and helped me to grow in that way. Mm-hmm. And it was through that I realized, hey, I need to be diligent in conversations with other people.
Yeah.
I need to be listening. I need to be engaging and help them to understand that I care about what they're saying. And I look at it as a point of worship. Where I'm looking at this person the way that God looks at them.
That's right.
When we look at this idea of, it was said that David was a man after God's heart, right? And I read that and I'm like, I read the rest of David's story and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, I mean, you remember the Bathsheba thing, right? I mean, what the heck? Are you sure he's a man after God's heart? I mean, so how do we get to that point? So it doesn't mean being perfect, right? So I think that is one of the biggest things that keeps us from having conversations like this. And Robert, I know you had no idea what you were walking into. No.
He actually asked me, so is there a topic this morning?
But I think that's the biggest thing that keeps us from doing things like this where we're engaging with other men in an effort to truly be men, right? Because if I'm going to be a man, I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to ask other people to hold me accountable, and I'm going to hold other people accountable, knowing that none of us is perfect. None of us are.
Yep.
We can't be. If we try to be perfect, we're going to absolutely go insane.
Yeah.
We're going to absolutely go insane. And plus, we're making very little of the cross when we say that we have to be perfect, or when we hold somebody else to these unrealistic standards.
Yeah.
Because it's impossible. And getting to that point where we say, okay, I'm going to walk through life with a group of men, and I know they're going to let me down, and I know I'm going to let them down, but we're all going to be okay with that. And we're all going to lift each other up when those moments come, because, dude, listen, crap is going to happen. That is guaranteed. In this world, you will have tribulation.
Yeah.
You will have broken bones. You will get told by the doctor that you got cancer, or your wife's got cancer, or your daughter got in a wreck on the way home from Savannah last night. We don't know if she's going to make it, or your wife's got childhood whatever happened, and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, it's those things are coming. How do we? We don't want to incubate our lives from it. I think that's the risk that we run. We try to get into a spot where we put ourselves and our family in this bubble where they're protected. We don't have to worry about it. We think, okay, I'm standing here with a shield and a sword, and I'm going to keep all this stuff out. Well, reality is, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to keep all that stuff out. So how do we build our lives? How do we build our lives in a way that when that stuff comes, we're able to turn and pivot with it in a way that, number one, is going to honor God. Number two is going to be a testimony to others. And number three, in others, being everybody, all others, your family, your wife, your kids. They're watching how you respond to stuff, right? I know Wes is. I know he's watching how I respond to something,
Even if he doesn't realize he's doing it.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, when he's faced with it. Well, that's how my dad handled it, or
right.
Just subconsciously, that's how he'll act.
60 years from now, he'll be talking with his grandkids, and he's going to say, you never knew my dad, but let me tell you about this. Well, what's that story going to be like?
Well, it was interesting. So I got a new harness for Remo, and got the GoPro attachment for it. It's really, really good. I think it's going to work good next hunting season. He has some tracking dogs, track wounded deer.
Go back and listen to that podcast.
So it was fun. So I put it on him the other night just to try and see. And so I walked outside, and I'm just doing some other things, just while we're outside, just cleaning up a little bit, just messing around. Well, I went back. It was 15 minutes of video. I went back and watched it. I bet 11 or 12 minutes of that video was him watching me. It was just crazy. And this is my Catahoula, right? And but the whole time, like the video, he's just standing there, and you can just see his head just moving back and forth, just watching what I'm doing. And I thought, if he's doing that, how much more are my kids doing that? How much more are people around me that are watching, and it was just interesting way to think about that people are paying attention to our lives, and really, especially our family, are looking at how we handle things. And again, I think I fall short on that a lot.
And people that we don't even know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Robert, so you've traveled to hunt a lot, over the past 8 years. It's been something that you've done. I know you've hunted a little bit here, but really a lot of your hunting experience has been having that one big trip a year, right? And that's something that I've learned about with you, with servicing, your archery needs and stuff like that. So when you go on those hunts, like, tell us about, so last year or year before last, was it last year? It was last year that you went on the big hunt to Africa.
Yes, 23.
Yeah. So tell us about, how some of that stuff went, what it was like, where you went and all that kind of stuff.
So it's funny how this is kind of just bridging into that. So a lot of what we're talking about with God and like what you were just describing about being a man and how the animal is looking at you, when you get into nature, you see the same thing. So I'm sitting on a water hole and it's 110 degrees and you see all animals have to come to this water.
Yeah.
But when all animals have to come to the water, that's the predator and the prey.
Yeah.
So now when the prey comes, they were more turned on to what's going on around me than a white-tailed deer. Or I don't know if you can get more tuned in, but we've all seen a white-tailed deer nonchalantly walking through the woods. Doesn't happen a lot.
Here's the thing. The difference with white-tailed deer. There aren't lions.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's what I mean. So here they are spooked. They hear a limb crack. They're paying attention. Here, every animal that came to the water hole, their eyes are moving everywhere. Their ears are moving everywhere. The animals that are with them aren't drinking. They're looking. So you may get 10 animals drinking. Well, that's because they got 5 more behind them looking. We would leave the stands and you would drive in the middle of the day. So it's around 110 degrees in the middle of the day. And they're all standing, multiple species are standing under the same tree. But what I immediately notice is they're not all facing the same way. 3 are facing to the north, 2 are facing to the south. Like they've got a 360 degree shield of what's coming, which is, John, what you're almost saying with your house.
Yeah.
I want to keep my family in this bubble, but stuff's coming in.
Oh yeah.
I always mess up if it's a jaguar or a leopard one's in South America, one's in Africa. That cat still gets in there from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That bad situation, that cancer, that infidelity, that alcoholism or whatever it is gets in. And it's so, I tell my daughter, like, trying to see patterns, you'll go a long ways. Patterns in myself, patterns at work, patterns in the way I worship, patterns in animals. And you can see everything that goes from hunting and animals goes to, well, let the predator come to the water hole. Everything may not run way off, but they're all looking at that cat. When we walk in our house, everyone in there is looking at us. The 2 dogs we have comes to me first. I'm the one that spanks them, and my wife will go, how do they come love on you when they're sitting in my lap?
Yeah.
I'm the spanker and the giver of love.
Yeah.
That's a big shoulder.
Like Remo, he pretty much only wants to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he goes out and as he stays inside, he goes outside. Usually I'm the one that has to call him back in.
My daughter had to chase a dog yesterday. She got so mad. She was like, I don't think I said a bad word, but I was screaming at him. And then you'll stick your head out and you'll just say his name and he comes running.
Yeah.
And I don't think as men, we realize how much power is in that. And are you a voice worth coming to? And that's hard. Sometimes I just want to beat the dog for not coming. And then he won't come in the future. So you got to balance it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times that's a reflection of what storm's going on inside of me.
Oh,
so I get to go to these hunting places and I'm sitting there and my spirit finally quiets and you look and it's, animals just eat and drink. They don't do anything else. And it's like, man, that's not what I see in nature. There's a bird that flies at the front. The wolves let the wounded wolf lead the way so they can set their own pace. There's a lot of things that go on in nature that whether you're biblical or science, whatever, Big Bang or God, well, there's some things that are unarguable, and there's animals do a lot of things that humans do. And if that's the case, can I do both and God still be there? So back to the hunting, I was fortunate enough to have a friend that, like Corey Parker, that kind of poured into me and invited me to go to Africa. And it was just an absolute amazing trip. Corey got me turned on to the elk. My buddy Toby, which John, you've met, he's come in here before. He turned me on to Africa hunting. Oddly enough, it's cheaper to go to Africa and hunt than it is to Colorado to kill an elk. Yeah. So just going there and having situations where I could stick my hand out of a door and hit a wild elephant on the butt, like that's pretty crazy. Like what kid from Brunswick, Georgia, gets to do that in some life? Yeah. So it was very cool. I was lucky enough to harvest, I think maybe 7 or 8 animals. I'm getting 3 mounted. Hopefully they'll be here in a couple months. I'm super excited about that.
Yeah.
I got to ride in a helicopter and see, endangered species. They had I can't remember if it's the white rhino or the black rhino that's more endangered, but you see this, I don't know how much they weigh, but you see this giant animal. It's as big as a truck and it's got a bracelet on its leg. And it's because it has a 24-hour, it's not a handler. I don't know really what you call it, but it's a It's a bodyguard.
Wow.
To keep from poachers, and it's got a tracker on its ankle, so it's got jewelry on running around in Africa. I mean, that was crazy. We're in a helicopter flying right over it. It had a baby with it.
Wow.
Like just
that?
really, I mean, it's like being in the zoo.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing.
That's cool.
The impalas over there, they'll blow at you like a doe does here.
Yeah.
So I'd already killed and harvested. I don't know if y'all say kill on here, but
It's fine.
It's fine.
I'd already got an impala, a really nice one. And like the third morning of hunting, there's this one that's just staying there and it's blowing the whole time. And I look at the guide and I say, hey, look, where I'm from, if you get an animal that does that, like you eventually have to shoot it. Like it's going to ruin our hunt. There's no animals coming. This thing stays for like 15 minutes, just blowing at us. He'll drink some water. It's looking around. He's by himself. I look at the guy and I said, hey, one more time and we're going to take him. Okay, Robert, whatever. Like you could tell he didn't believe me.
Yeah.
That thing blew again. I grabbed the bow. I said, hey, get the camera. Are you for real, mate? And I'm like, yeah. We got up. I said, one more time. And in the video that he took, you can hear him blow. And as soon as whack, you hear it hit him.
Yeah.
The guy's like, oh, you weren't kidding. And I was like, no, like we'll leave him be and then we'll finish hunting the rest of the day and then we'll go get it. And he's like, you guys are crazy. Like we don't do that here.
Yeah.
I was like, well, we got to see other animals because we did it.
Yeah.
So
That's good. Yeah. If it blows, it's got to go.
there you go.
Yeah. That's my philosophy.
So when you were on that hunt, you got back and you told me a story about when you went to shoot something and some of the mishaps that you had. So share that story with us.
So for anybody that's thinking about Africa, do some research, make sure you're going to a good place. We were, when I got there, it was like being 12 years old again. First time I was ever in a tree stand. There was one time I almost dropped the bow because my hand was so sweaty. I was shooting a carbon bow that was super fast that John, you set up for me. I took some FMJs for the bigger game. And when it came in, the bow literally almost fell out of my hand. And as I was sitting there, I was leaning forward. So my mouth was open a little bit and I didn't know it at the time. I could hear my heartbeat out of my mouth.
Oh, wow.
So I leaned forward and it was an oryx or a Hem's buck. It's a black and white zebra, big, long, straight horns. And I leaned back and my guide was asleep. And so I leaned back and I look at him thinking he was making noise and the noise went away. I was like, that's weird. And I leaned forward. And as I had to lean forward, I had to kind of look off to my right to see around the blind I was in. And I heard it again. I'm like, what is that noise? And it took me probably 2 or 3 minutes to realize it was my heartbeat. I would open my mouth, I would hear it. I would close my mouth, I wouldn't hear it.
That's wild.
I was that anxious and heart pumping, and it was unbelievable. And I was like, am I going to be able to pull the bow back?
Yeah.
That's an 85-pound monster. And I was like, am I going to be strong enough when it comes time? And luckily I was. But I think the thing that you're referencing is one of the first animals that I got to take over there. I'm super excited. There's like 10 or 15 animals in front of me. They're in a water hole. The back of the water hole is maybe 15 yards. So you're shooting them very close. Again, they're tuned in. I'd already missed a water buffalo, water buffalo high. They ducked an arrow at 85 pounds. I think you had me shooting like 330 feet per second.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. Yeah.
So 330-ish, 32-inch draw at that one was maybe 14 or 13 yards, and it ducked. I was like, man, this is
A water buffalo?
yes. As a water buffalo, there's a Cape buffalo.
Yeah, Cape Buffalo is really big.
They're both giant.
Which one killed Mufasa? Wildebeest. Okay, it wasn't a buffalo. I'm sorry, it was a wildebeest.
I thought Scar killed Mufasa.
He did, but well, it was a stampede. So he'd already ducked one. So
Say it again.
Brandon and the squirrel over there.
So I get excited. The animals are in there, and I go to pull this bow back. And we may or may not have had this same mishap. Wes, you and I were talking about this the other day. If you have a release and it's a handheld release, I strongly recommend keeping the strap on it because it can come out of your hand. And
I
there's
have this conversation with people all the time. Not about your
well, it's okay. I could take it.
But no, I tell them all the time. Listen, because we'll have people come in and they're like, hey, I kind of want to, especially this time of year, I kind of want to learn how to shoot a handheld. Shoot a thumb release or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, how long have you been shooting? And, I ask that question always, but I don't care. I really don't care what the answer is. I always say, well, why don't you start with one with a strap? And they're like, why? That's the point. I want to get away from it being strapped to my hand. I'm like, dude, no. you want this thing strapped to your hand just for a little bit, because people don't realize, we're creatures of habit. We'll just do stuff, not even knowing it. If you don't believe me, when you get up tomorrow morning and you go to put your socks on, think about what you're doing and try to put it on your right foot first, or when you go to, or don't think about what you're doing, just go to put your socks on. And then the next time you put your socks on, try to do the opposite. And you almost can't do it. It's like your brain won't let you do it. Something as simple as that.
You've just done it so many times.
Yeah.
So perfect example, like you said, with that release, there's an animal in front of me. I've never taken it. There's so much activity going on. I'm thinking about so much and trying to process. My guide's talking to me. Is the screen right? Is the bow right? What's the wind doing? How far is the animal? He's now taking 3 steps closer to me. What's my pin at? Which bow? Because I took 2 bows because I can't make a decision. So I've got a smaller Matthews that I shoot. It's very fast as well. That's the Impala and things like that. I'm shooting that with the Kudu, and there is a buffalo there that if I'm going to shoot something that big, I've got these FMJs and I've got this 85-pound monster with me. I've got both bows in the stand.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So even a more distraction. So which bow am I grabbing? Which arrow am I shooting? Which broadhead? Because I had like 3 different broadheads as well. The bigger animals, I'm shooting a fix to make sure there's nothing bigger hide, things like that. So I get the bow. I'm thinking about all this. And then when you clip on, the last thing I'm thinking about is my right hand. So I go to draw the bow back. I'm in a concrete blind. It is, I think they said it's around 10 inches thick. And you're like, well, why are you sitting in a concrete block? Well, later in the hunt, an elephant literally drags its butt down the side of this thing, scratching itself. And if we're in just some little small blind, the thing's coming in with us.
Yeah.
So when these buffalo come in and there's 50 of them in a herd and they get spooked, they're going to run right through what you're in. So the window is maybe 15 inches tall and we're maybe 5 foot wide. So I'm shooting through just a little flat shelf that I'm looking in. Animals there. I'm super excited. Heart's pumping. I go to pull it back and the arrow shoots, comes off the string. I hit the button. I don't know what happened, but the arrow shoots the concrete stone right in front of me. Pow! Stuff goes all over. The guide's like, oh my God, did your bow break? I'm like, I have no idea. The animals don't run off. So we're talking, but we're not talking. We're not using words. He's looking at me. I'm looking at him. Our eyes are big as dinner plates. I pick the arrow up. I look at the tip. Can you say brands in here? Yeah. It's an iron will. Anybody that knows archery, that's an expensive, nice head. It shot a rock, straight rock at maybe 2 yards out of an 80-pound bow and didn't break it. It didn't break the arrow, thank God, because I was too excited to even think about it. I picked this arrow up off the ground, look at the tip, knock it, and then shoot the animal. And my guide looks at me after it's done and goes, I can't believe you shot that arrow. And I was like, what do you mean? That was a perfect shot. And he was like, dude, you just shot a rock. You're lucky it didn't blow up in your hand.
Yeah.
Which is what should have probably happened. I literally just shot a rock at 80-pound pull at 2 yards with an arrow and picked it up and shot the same arrow. I didn't check the arrow. I didn't bend it. And just, there's so much going on in that moment and a lot of things that we do in life that you just don't think about everything. Luckily, I killed the animal and it was pretty cool. And now we just laugh at the video and John tells people, and
No, I've never.
That's the kind of friends you need right there.
I've never told. You're never gonna believe what Robert did.
You could totally do it. I don't mind. Like, so I think that's what we were talking about earlier about having people around you, and why don't we say these things? Like, every human I've ever met has done something stupid.
Oh yeah.
I promise you. They may tell you they haven't, but they have. There's a moment when
tell you they hadn't, they're lying.
Exactly right. There's a moment when they go, "Oh my God, I hope nobody finds out," or "Oh my God, I can't believe I did that." And that's normally the things that you keep with you. Me shooting that rock with a bow and arrow and then shooting it, I'll remember that forever. Like, hey, don't do this. Even though it's the second time I did it with you, John, when you were actually tuning that bow for an elk trip, that same one, handheld release. Yeah. We made some adjustments. We went, from a 90% let off to like a 60 or something. So I was holding more weight. First arrow, we had been shooting for over an hour. You guys were closed for over an hour when this happened. And it goes to jump on me. I pull it back. We're looking at other things on the bow. Pulls it right out of my hand. Shoot myself in the hand with the release. The bow jumps forward out of my hand. Falls on the cams. Bends the cams, which I leave like the next, day or two. I was leaving to go on my hunt. We couldn't do anything to fix it. There was a young man, one of your employees was sitting there, got hit with part of the arrow or part of the rest.
Part of the rest broke off.
the arrow hit the ceiling. Thank God we didn't shoot somebody. So apparently that's a common thing for me. So now John won't let me shoot bows in here without a strap.
We've had crazy stuff like that happen. In here even recently, we had a guy was shooting his bow, and he's been shooting a handheld release, and he let it slip out of his hand, and it I don't think it tore up anything on his bow though.
No, it didn't.
Which was surprising. Normally it does. Normally that release comes down and
smashes everything.
It broke his release.
It did break his release. Hit your roller guard for your cables or something like that, and just destroy that stuff. It's not made to be hit like that.
Yeah,
that's what. If you remember, so it broke my cable guard, my rest that we just put on the bow that night. It hit my hand and it caused a blood blister on my hand where it hit me so hard. I mean, it messed the bow up. We had to change several parts on that bow.
Yeah, and then so the main issue was that when the bow fell, when it came out of your hand and fell on that concrete floor, and it just crushed that cam. So that was the main issue that kept us from we had everything else to get it back going, but we didn't have that cam. So, but yeah, that was stuff like that happens. But yeah, shooting the block wall and then picking that arrow back up. Whew.
That wasn't the smartest thing I'd ever done.
I'm glad you didn't come back, with stitches through your hands from that arrow break.
So imagine if that was to happen out there. We took a bus ride. We flew into Johannesburg, and then drove 3 or 4 hours up and went in the middle of nowhere. We're in this right beside us is Kruger National Park. There's no hospitals around. There's no I would have had to just deal with graphite in my hand make sure you're not bleeding or whatever, and then either take. I don't even know. It take you hours to get a shuttle or something out there to drive you away.
Wow.
Not to mention the cats gonna run around. There's lions out there. Something happens out there, you're in some serious trouble. It's not time out. Let me run to the hospital.
Yeah.
So it's I got very lucky there.
Same thing. If you're in the middle of Colorado hunting.
Oh yeah.
It's
you hike in 7-10 miles, 15 miles.
Right.
It's not a timeout. Let me get a doctor in here.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Pretty wild stuff.
Pretty crazy story.
Yeah.
The dumb things we do as hunters.
Gosh, man.
Just
Yeah.
guys. We
That's
don't
true.
even need to be trying to hunt something. We're all idiots.
That's very true.
There, I said it.
Why are you looking at me?
I don't know.
What'd I do?
It felt good to turn my neck that way at the moment. It wasn't directed at you.
Like you said, if you haven't done it, you're going to.
I've done a couple stupid things.
Well, you said something, and I wanted to mention it earlier. But I was watching a preacher was talking in a similar podcast, and he said, you want to be a father like God is, and sometimes we run away from it, but I want my kid now as a dad. And once you become a father, to me, it changed my life and then my relationship with God. And I want my kid to go, oh my God, I just messed up. I got to call my dad. Not, oh my God, I can't tell my dad.
Yeah.
And again, it's Robert's fault. Whichever answer she says or whatever she thinks is my fault.
Yeah.
So it's, hey, when stuff hits the fan, my dad's got me. That's
really good.
That's a big one to shoulder as well, because when they don't call.
Dove just put his hand on John's shoulder and shook his head. No. That's got to make you feel good.
Well, who are you calling, though? Because you got to call somebody. There you go.
Yeah, now he points
Now
at
the
him.
truth comes out.
That's right.
What's that movie? I think it's Ben Affleck walks in, says, hey, I need you to help me. We're going to take your car. We can never talk about this again. And it's 3:00 in the morning. Guy looks up and says, or I think the guy looks up and says, whose car are we taking? Mine or yours?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And that's what dads do for sons. Hey, I need you, Dad. Okay, what are we doing?
Yeah, I tell my kids, they get worried about something or whatever, and I always tell them, when I start worrying, you can worry, but I'll tell you when that time comes, and because that's my job.
Yep.
My job's to take that, and not them. So
it's another big thing that men have to wear,
Yeah.
and I don't think that
there's stuff that happens at the church that my wife never knows about. I don't want her to know.
Yeah, it doesn't need to. You can't fix it. All you're going to do is worry about it. I do the same thing.
So, I don't want her going in looking at people different. I don't want her to have to shoulder all of it, although she does shoulder probably more than she should. But, that's part of, I think, being a man. And then I do have the other men in my life that I can call and I can say, dude, like, I think I'm coming unglued, you know, but to try to guard them. So, but yeah, cool.
You know, my wife, we recently were talking about just some stuff, and without sharing details or whatever.
That means it's you. They're talking about you, Wes.
But, I mean, yeah, partly.
I'm just kidding.
We're talking about, we're still in the throes of rearing children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're 16 and 19, but there's still a big responsibility that we have, going through this. And she was saying, she said, just like you don't tell me every single part of every single decision you make every day, there are times when I'm going through stuff with our kids, mothering our kids, where I need to make decisions in the moment. I need to, I'm having a conversation with them, because that's when you get to this point, we've learned, it's no longer just providing food and shelter. I mean, there's a lot of conversations that happen.
Yeah.
Whether it be with my daughter or with my son, a lot of conversations that happen that she gets to have. And she said, I don't come to you and say, hey, how do I need to respond to this? Now, there are times where she does, because it's something bigger, or she wants to make sure that we're in lockstep on something. And she was telling me, she said, you don't understand the freedom that you give me in that trust that you've shown in me to be able to handle that stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know I was doing it,
Yeah.
But, and that's something that's recent, but that's part of being a man in that way of, not trying to be in control of every situation. And I think that's the unfortunate part of when people think of submission. They think that, okay, you're going to be in control all the time, but that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
You're given space to say, hey, you got this. I trust you. Right. And,
Yeah.
So that was something that she and I recently talked about. So
I think that's so important, and a lot of people aren't fortunate enough, or they didn't think about it. I definitely got lucky with it, but having a spouse, whether it's the wife or the husband, that you can feel that way about. Like we tell our daughter, the most important decision you'll ever make is the spouse.
yeah.
And you better make sure that it's from God. Because I got lucky. If it was up to me, I'd have definitely messed it up, and I've almost messed it up several times since. Like I may mess it up tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely. It's the old saying, like, you married up. 100% true for me. Like,
Hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this, but I'm the same way.
Yeah,
100%.
I married up, man. Like I don't know too many women that could live with me. Like, just straight up honest.
Just one.
Yeah, I mean, like, seriously, she is that good. Like, if I really don't think too many people could put up with me. I really don't. And,
I'm definitely in that boat.
And so I know she's been awesome, even through planting the church and doing all that stuff. Like, never would have made it without her. And I think that's like the partnership God calls in a marriage. And it hasn't been perfect, but I do try to encourage young couples, especially who are about to get married, like, don't fall into the lie that the world tells you about marriage, that it's just a grind. It's just, because it can get better every day. You're going to sometimes take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but like, it is a good thing when it's done God's way.
Oh yeah.
But the world tells us, and you hear guys like, yeah, I gotta go home to old ball and chain, and I'm like, dude, no wonder your life sucks. You like, no, if you call her the old ball and chain, like, man, the old lady, I'm like, no wonder your love life struggles, right?
I asked the guy one day. He was here in the shop, and he referred to his wife as old lady. I said, at what point do you refer to her as your old lady? Like, when did that happen?
Yeah.
And then a young guy came in like a few weeks later, and he referred to his girlfriend as that. I said, buddy, listen, I know you didn't come in here for advice. All right. You just came to get some arrows, and we're making them for you right now. I'll have you out of here in 5 minutes. I said, but let me give you some advice. Don't call your girlfriend your old lady.
Yeah.
Don't call your wife your old lady. Give her more respect than that. You know, I said, even if you think it's a term of endearment, he's like, what does that mean?
I was selling a boat to a guy, and he was like, let me think about it. Let me go talk to old Moneybags out in the car. And I was like,
Old Moneybags.
I was like, I had to try so hard not to, like, just to keep a straight face.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, Wes was like, well, that just happened.
Remember that when it's your time, though. It's funny because there's so many men, they put so much responsibility on the woman that she, in my opinion, wasn't meant to have, and then judge her for the job that they should be doing, but she's doing now. And it's like, man, she's everything. She's the yes, the no, the why, the how we pay for it, everything. And then they complain about the life that they have while bashing her the whole time when she's not even supposed to be in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's, I guess the word would be, well, I'm not going to try to use a big word because I'm not that smart, but it's, it's not worth it. But it's really throwing off your responsibility onto her and then blaming her for not doing the responsibility, you know, and that's not fair. So,
well, like we talked about earlier, kind of the way we started the conversation, we love being able to blame somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we may have talked about this on other episodes, but the devil made me do it or somebody made me do it. And scripture is really clear. Like, it's your own evil desires that drag you away.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, you better be real careful and real sure if you think the devil made you do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, did you give in to temptation? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Did the devil actually make you do something? I don't know.
Yeah.
We had a pastor that passed away at a church in Polar that we used to go to, and he did a sermon on guardrails, and I was like, man, that's pretty strong. Like, I know I'm broken, I know I'm flawed, so I make sure I don't do a few things.
Absolutely.
Because I know if I put myself in that situation, we're all men, we all have desires, regardless of what it is. It's whether it's eating Oreos or doing crack, or I tell people all the time, my addiction is golf.
Yeah,
hitting a golf ball in the middle of the face, pure. In my opinion, is no different.
What's that like, by the way?
It's pretty good the few times I've got to do it. There was something the other day that said they did a study, and it's the same dopamine release as like a hit of heroin or something crazy.
Wow.
And so I'll tell guys when we're talking, I was like, whether I'm going to a driving range to hit golf balls or you're going to a bar to have a beer, both of us are doing the same thing to our family, and that's not being there.
Yeah, yeah.
So my addiction is no different than yours.
Yeah.
And so many people, oh, that's a little bit different. I'm like, no, it's really not. Go ask my wife and kid and go ask theirs. Hey, you don't see your husband 2 hours every afternoon. Yeah. And that's something I still struggle with because I want to compete at, an amateur level and be good and do things like that. And how do you balance it?
Yeah. And that's the thing too. And man, if I could tell story after story after story after story of how I've screwed up as a dad. But one of the things that I did have to realize early on when I had young children, I didn't hunt. Like there were several years I just didn't hunt. And I mean,
it was weird. I gotta admit, it was weird. But at the same time, I didn't really miss it.
Yeah. And once my oldest got to be 3, maybe 2 years old, 2-3 years old, I would set up ground blinds, carry him into the woods, put a sleeping bag down. A lot of times he'd nap. A lot of times he'd wake up. We'd see deer. We killed deer. But I'd take him some gummy bears or something in there, and he'd sit there, and but it was a definite break from the way I hunted before, and sometimes you have to sacrifice those things, So like you said, you're not absent the whole time. And now my kids are older and we do it together and I have more opportunity and those days come, and I try to encourage a lot of young dads, like, you're in a season, make the most of it. But it's a season, those nights of getting 2-3 hours of sleep. I remember our first child, I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life, but it wasn't,
you're not gonna
it wasn't, now we get 3 or 4 and the youngest is 14. I'm kidding about that, but it's one of those things where you don't, you have to remember those are seasons, and be willing to sacrifice sometimes.
That's such a good lesson that somebody told me that actually came from my wife, and it was construction's that way. Like if you hate your job or if you hate life right now, wait 3 months.
Yeah.
Like, so in construction, when it's tough, you don't like pouring footers and doing the rebar and all that. Wait 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You can be doing something else.
Now you're into floor prep. You don't like floor prep. Wait 2 weeks. Now you're building walls. You don't like that. The roof's coming next.
That's right.
Now fixings are coming in. Our life's the same way.
Yeah.
You don't like 2-month-old baby that cries all night. Wait a couple months.
Yeah.
They'll sleep through the night. You don't like that part. Now they're going to be crawling. You don't like crawling. Now they're going to be running.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. We were eating at a restaurant last night, and there was this cute little girl, and she was squalling her head off, kicking. You could tell she was just kind of tired, and she was about ready for bed. And mom had her, and the mother had her, and I'm like, it's kind of sad that my boys are growing up, but I'll be honest, I don't miss that.
Yeah.
But as soon as that kid got tired and went to sleep and was laying on dad's shoulder, you're like, I miss that.
Yeah, that's the part that's awesome. I remember laying in bed with mine putting their head on my shoulder and us watching some cartoon or something, and it's kind of odd now if my 22-year-old's laying in bed with his head on my shoulder, so we don't do that anymore.
I don't know. You were doing that last night. Oh, no, I was laying my head on your shoulder.
That's right.
You were in my room.
He's like, get in my bed, Dad.
That's what happens with us, too. I got to go in there, and she's like, why are you in here? It's like, I just miss you.
Yeah.
You want to come lay on the couch and watch a movie or something? I'm like, no, that's weird. Like, what age did it become weird?
That's right. That's
Can
right.
we go back a few years? You used to be my little buddy.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, so when my daughter was a baby, she'd be in the back seat crying or whatever, and I could reach back and touch her foot, and that was enough.
Yeah.
She'd stop crying.
Yeah.
And today I need not touch her foot, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
What are you doing?
But so like yesterday, she was going down to Savannah to go out with some friends and stuff, and I didn't get to see her before she left because she was babysitting for somebody yesterday, and she had to go straight home from there and get her stuff and get ready and then go to Savannah, so I didn't get to see her. But I called her, was talking with her for a few minutes, and I just prayed for her over the phone. I said, listen, don't close your eyes. You're driving. She's like, oh, my car's got this. I said, Allie, we just won't pray. It's okay. She said, no, I'll keep my eyes open. And I prayed for her, the time she was going to have, prayed for the person she was going to be with and everything. And finding a way to still have that interaction with her,
Sorry.
you know,
Just say that again.
okay, grief, Siri, quit listening to us.
I know, man.
But
we're getting spied on.
She killed the moment. Gosh,
Yes, she did.
But being intentional about it, just saying, all right, I know she's driving. I know she's on the way down there. I didn't get to see her. I'm just going to call her real quick. And, we were on the phone for like 10 minutes and she's like, Dad, I got to redo my makeup. I said, well, I didn't mean, did I hurt your feelings? She said, no. I said, all right. Well, that's cool. Get off the phone. I'm like, wow, girl's so weird.
But I remember praying the first time Heather and I were talking. That's my wife. And we were talking and just praying for your kids and all that. And I said a prayer for my daughter's future husband.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is weird. Like, I'm going to kill that little kid.
I
And
know.
then here I am praying for him. Like, and what's really weird is God don't make him what I want him to be. Make him what you want him to be for my daughter.
Yeah.
And to talk about completely humbling, like take me out of the picture.
And that's hard
Yeah.
because that's where I'm living right now. These guys are getting interested in Allie, and I'm like looking at them and I'm judging the crap out of them. I mean, I'm going to be,
I think that's okay.
Bro,
I think so too.
like I'm not like one of those dads that believes in arranged marriages and everything, but I don't think I'm that far from it. All right. I mean, she's got a little more time and then I'm going to step in and be like, all right, hang on, here's what we're going to do. But no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, I've been praying for years for both of their spouses and I have no idea who they are. I don't know where they are. I don't know their name. I don't know what color they are, what their hair looks like. I don't know any of that, but God does.
Yep.
And I want him to take care of them. Yeah. I want God to keep my daughter's future husband pure. I want him to keep my son's future wife pure. I want him to grow them to be who he wants them to be. I don't care what they do. I don't care where they're from. I don't care about any of that. I care more about their character. And that's been my prayer for years, because I know partly that I'm going to struggle with that, you know, and I want whoever's going to marry my daughter to be about protecting her,
absolutely.
You know, in every way, not just physically. You know, there's so much more that goes into that. And I want him to be a man. That's what I want.
And what's crazy, and my wife and I had this conversation too, so many men think the physical side is what makes you a man. That's really the easier part.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Well, I feel like, especially in today's world, you're not fighting off saber-toothed tigers and things like that. It might be a guy that says something, and really you shouldn't be looking to be fist fighting there. It should be, hey, man, have a good night, and just take her to safety.
Yeah.
So really the hard part is doing the disciplined things, getting up at 5 a.m. to go provide for them when you don't want to. You know, whether it's one of my first jobs in Savannah was cleaning toilets.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I could find at the time. And it was like, man, this sucks, but I can't let my significant other do that stuff.
Yeah.
That's on me to do.
Yeah.
So I think so many men, at least men that I grew up with, if you had the physical side down, that was being a man. And then now becoming a father, it's paying the bills, going to work, making sure you have a job, helping with homework, being present, you know, after school, like that. That's more difficult than just you fought off some bad guy. Like that. When did that happen? Once in 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. My oldest is getting married in October. And so that's what that makes you feel old.
All boys, you said you have?
Yeah, I have 3 boys. And so my oldest is getting married, and his fiance, man, like, she's so awesome. Like, we're so blessed with her. And we've joked before, like, if y'all don't get married, like, we're keeping her. Because she's just that special. So we're so thankful for that. We're looking forward to that too in October. But it makes you like, holy cow, like, I'm old enough to have a son that's getting married, you know, and but it's exciting too, and knowing that he's got a good future wife who loves the Lord, and you know, that's so encouraging and comforting to know that. So that's cool.
Good deal. All right. You got anything else you want to say, Mr. Dub?
You missed so talkative today. It's been hard to get a word in.
It's a fat boy. You got something else you want to say? Nope. Y'all good? All right. We'll wrap it up right there. Robert, we appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Thank you for the invite.
It was awesome.
Enjoy talking with you. Talking about all kinds of different things, and yeah, we'll do it again, I'm sure. All right. Kill it. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed listening. Hey, reach out to us and let us know what you want to hear about. Join the conversation online. Hop over on your favorite social channel and give us some comments. Shoot us an email. You can email us at podcast@bowtreader.com. That's BOWTREADER.com. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about maybe if you want to come join us on the podcast, or any kind of topics that you want us to cover, regardless of what it is. If it's hunting related, something that's specific to bows or arrows, new gear, old gear, if you got any kind of spiritual questions, anything about your faith that you're interested in, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to cover it for you. And thank you again so much for listening. God bless you.